Hey Technostuds! One of the ways that we can keep our data safe is by practicing good access control. That is, we can set up users on our system and only allow certain users to gain access to certain data. We set up what's called permissions. And so we're going to get into access control and permissions in this lesson. Let's say we have a folder that has some sensitive data inside of it. Well, what we can do is we can practice access control. Access control only allows certain people to access this particular folder. And so we do that by setting up users and giving those users permissions to be able to access that data. There are two different ways that we could set this up. One of them is by user. And then we would set up a user on the system and then give the user permissions into this folder, therefore giving them permissions to everything inside of that folder. I'm on my demo machine here, and what we're going to do is we're going to play around, first of all, with seeing what these users look like on this machine, and then we're going to give them permissions into a folder. So let's first of all take a look at the users. What I'm going to do is click on the start button right here and type in computer management and hit enter. And what will pop up here is a bunch of different tools that I can manage the computers. Now there's different ways I can add accounts to this computer, but this is the way that I like to do it. And so I'm going to click on this users folder right here. And you can see that I've already created this demo user account right here. If I wanted to create and then I've also created this example. If I wanted to create another account, I could just right click on here and say new user. So a new user pops up. What is the username for this? Maybe I'm going to give this as example 2 for this user. Give it a full name. I'm just going to say example 2. And then password, and then we would come up with some sort of password that we could remember for this or that we give them. And then it says user must change password at next logon. I'm going to just uncheck that, and we're just going to keep this all by the defaults beyond that. And then I'm going to create this user. So now I've got this example 2 that's created on here. Can close this out and we can see example 2 right there. So that's how to create a user on this computer. Next, what I'm going to do, I'll close out of this. And we're going to go to this test folder right here. I'm going to right click on this. And let's say I just want to give access to certain people on here. So I'm going to go into the properties of here. And I see this security tab. And so I can click on the security tab. And here I've got the demo user. And let's say I want to add one of those examples now. So I click on edit to edit this. I'm going to add. And I'm going to add one of those users. So maybe I'm going to do example 2. I will check the name here and it finds that account now. So now we have that account. I'll click on OK. And then I can select what level do I want them to have access. I can read and execute. I can list folder content. I can read. So the read would be that they could just open up a document. The read and execute means they could actually be able to execute some sort of program, or here's the list folder contents to open up the folder and see. So at this point in time, they can't really do much with this unless I click on write. Now they can start adding documents to that folder. If I click on modify, now they can modify other documents that are already in that folder, or if I can click on full control, and now they can actually change the permissions of this folder. So then I'm going to click OK, and then we have implemented. There are advanced settings that I can go in here, but for now you can see that I've just given pretty much full control to this example 2. I'm going to click on OK. And now when that user logs into the system, they have access to this folder versus example, the other account that I had, would not have access to this. So example 2 does have access now. Example 1 does not have access to this test folder. Now imagine you had 100 users that you had to grant access into that folder. That could be really problematic. So we do have something called groups too, and there's a lot of advantages to using groups. And so what we can do is instead we can add users to a group and then the group to that folder as well. So that would be another way that we could go about doing this. If I wanted to add a group to this, what I could do is click on the Start menu and I type in Computer Management. I'm going to go to that same location where I manage the users. Once again, there are different ways that I can manage this, but we're going to go to here. Gives us a great visual on how this looks. There's this Groups right here. I can see that there's already quite a few groups on here by default, but I'm going to create a new one. So a new group, and I'm going to just give them access to this test folder. So I'm going to call this test folder access is the name of this group. And then I can add members to it. So maybe I want to add, I'm going to add example and hit enter. And I'm also going to add example 2. Now I'm going to click on create, and now that group is in the system. Now if I wanted to give that group access to this test folder, I would just get into the permissions of this. I'll go to the security tab, I'll hit edit. I'm going through the same process, but what I'm going to do is add this test folder access. I'll do test folder access. Try that out. And there, now we can give them access. And what level do I want? Well, maybe I want them to be able to write and modify, but I don't want to give them full control. So they don't have access to change the permissions of here. So so then we're going to click on OK, and I'll click OK again. And now this group, everybody part of this group has access to this test folder. Now what I've shown you is the way that Microsoft gives access to files and folders. They're called NTFS permissions. And there's a lot of different ways that we can set this up. In fact, I really love how NTFS sets up their permissions. It gives us a lot of flexibility and the ways that we can give access to certain files and folders. And we can do it also on a per file basis. So it doesn't necessarily have to have just on the folder level. It can be on the file level as well. Linux permissions are much more basic in how they operate from 2 different levels. You can't add multiple users or groups. It's just one user or one group. The other thing is the level of permissions is very high level. I mean, you can either read, write, or execute. So there's only 3 levels of permissions that you can really add to the user, a single group, or other would be everyone else. And so what we do is we would allow the user, which would be the owner of this file. Do we want them to read? Well, probably. Do we want them to write? Maybe. And do we want them to execute? So then we would turn all of those on. For the group, maybe we want them just to be able to read and write. And for the rest of the world, maybe we want them to just read. So we give this level of permissions to those users, groups, and the rest of the world. I'm on a Linux box here. Let's take a look at what this looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say ls, which is list. So it's going to list the contents of the directory, and I'll just do a present working directory to see where I'm at. I'm in the home and then the administrator account here. So I'm going to do an ls to list what's inside of here, and we'll do L to see at what some of the additional information is. And one of the additional informations that it shows us is the permissions here. And the first set of RWX here is the user. The second one is the group, and the third one is going to be everyone else. So whatever group is or whatever user is assigned to this folder, which is administrator right here, we see this. This is the administrator. So the administrator has read, write, and execute permissions. And then whoever's part of the administrator group, so we see a group right here, has the rights to read and execute. And then everyone else has the rights just to read and execute. So we look further down here, we have this folder snap right here, and just the user administrator has the read, write, and execute level on this. And the group, so whoever's part of the administrator group, doesn't have really any permissions at all. And then same thing with the rest of the world, doesn't have permissions into that folder. So that's how we would see take a look at the permissions of these different directories, these different folders that we see right here. I do have a visual of, here's a folder right here, and what I can do is I can right click on this folder and go to properties. We can see the permissions from a visual perspective. Here's the permissions. I'm going to click on there. We can see the owner is administrator, so that's the user of the group right here, and the level of permissions. Here is the group level administrator and the access that the group has, and then other, everyone else. And so they can just access files. So what I wanted to maybe do is maybe I want to change the group to be a different group. And so I'm going to choose one of the groups here. We'll just say the users, and then the users, what do I want them to be able to do? Maybe I just want them to be able to list files only. So there I've changed the permissions now, and then I can close out of this.